This is the John Brown Alliance, where we don't fear, we fight. I'm about 7 generations removed from Manifest Destiny and about 4 generations removed from slavery in the United States of America. Some of us in 2025 are getting sick and tired of fighting this battle, literally. Also, by people who have assimilated to the idea that they're accepted by white people based on their behavior, to include some of our black leaders and governors that we should keep our mouths shut and talk about something else. I have too many different nationalities running through my blood to not be absolutely angry about everything that is going on where I live. First of all, this is Indian country, where I come from initially. Then black people were married into my family. So I'm also African American and proud of it. I am also not willing to ignore the fact that there are slave owners in my family as well. That being said, I don't understand where the rest of you are coming from. I do not understand the younger generation or the older generation telling us how to behave. I have a problem with that. My land as a Native American was stolen from me. Some of my ancestors were stolen from Africa. Everything every white person ever did to me was stolen or assimilated. So when white people talk about what's going on right now, and I've gotten this a lot. You know, my parents and grandparents came over here, grandparents came over as indentured servants from England. That's not the same thing. Not at all. Once your servitude was up, you could go on your own and buy land. The Native Americans and black people did not have that luxury. So what I want to say right now to the descendants of these people who are so downtrodden, most of them came over here and their forefathers were very wealthy or endowed, as one of mine was, with an entire county in the state of Maryland. All these riches to enslave people, just to rape and be mixed in with others, and then denounce them as if you have no responsibility. Where is your integrity? All of you. Because every last one of these people who joined the Maga movement when Donald Trump came down them escalators in 2016, in some way benefited from slavery. They either got a job over a black person during Jim Crow, was able to lynch someone and get away with it before that, or just attend in the White House under Woodrow Wilson a viewing of Birth of the Nation in front of everyone, despite black protests from people that fought in foreign wars. This is the ugliness you embrace when you embrace Donald Trump. You embrace something that you ask other people to endure, that you are too weak, pathetic, and uneducated to understand and endure. This is the very definition of evil. And yet you pretend that you're Christian. You are an abomination to Christianity. Why don't you understand that? Everything you have ever done since you came to America and declared yourselves kings over African Americans and Native Americans has been complicit with the devil himself that you preach against every day. We are not fooled by the personalities you put up here, by the lily white faces and the blonde hair and the Botox and all that. This is not our first rodeo. In order to understand how you will be defeated heavily in the United States of America, you must first understand your original sin when you tainted this land with your evil. But I digress. So at this point, I would like to talk about anti-Semitism and this whole Maga thing with anti-Semitism and this newly found interest in a man called Leo Frank. Now, I wrote all this stuff down because I did my research, and I do not want you to be misguided as to how this is all being manipulated to make you think that Maga is pro anything other than white supremacy. I'm going to start by letting you see my phone, and I'm going to do a Google search on 1912 Georgia murders. Okay, so we get Georgia. Let's not do that. Let's do oh wow, okay. Forsyth County, Georgia, 1912. A man named Leo Frank, a Jewish American, was accused of raping and murdering a factory worker where he was foreman. Now, several accounts said that black people did it, of course. And in 1915, he was executed for this murder. Now, this particular murder sparked the formation of the Anti-Defamation League. The Anti-Defamation League claimed to defend all people. But under Donald Trump, all they're talking about is Jews. Now let's get back to Mr. Leo Frank. There is no doubt in my mind that Mr. Leo Frank was indeed probably prosecuted based on his race. I don't deny that. I don't think that. It was Forsyth County, Georgia in 1912, and at that time, anything that wasn't white, that's good. He was there, he was convenient, all that, that kind of thing. However, I do think we can overcompensate for things. Now, I do believe in the Anti-Defamation League. I do have a lot of Jewish friends. I also have a lot of Muslim friends. So I have a problem, a definite problem, with the United States military going over in World War II and freeing Jews to go over to what used to be Palestine, establishing Israel, and then systematically over decades, exterminating Palestinian Muslims. I have a problem with that. Now, I did vote for Kamala Harris. So every Muslim in the world has attacked me online and said that, I was a Zionist. By the same token, I've had Muslims say, you voted for somebody that was pro-Israel. No, I did not. I voted for a candidate that I thought was going to do the greater good for American people. So let's get educated and stop talking shit. At that particular time, we had two choices. One was Donald Trump and one was Kamala Harris. And because people could not get themselves together to understand how America works and oppression works, they decided to vote for the oppressor. So I have a beef about that. And I have a beef about South Florida that's been going on since the 1980s. But we'll get back to that when I give you my little synopsis. Because this is all leading somewhere. And I have, since 2016, put all this shit together. So you're in Appalachia and you want coal. But you vote against coal mining, science, and how to eradicate it. Now, as we speak in 2025, black lung has gone up in Appalachia. Not only the disease, but silicone exposure. Because you wanted Latinos locked up? And you hated blacks? You need to get clear with the facts. The fact of the matter is, you got hoodwinked, bamboozled, used. White supremacy is solely based on the next in line theory. Because they came to America and thought they killed off all the Indians. They only let people into the old boy network that they want. That's why you're not in there. That's why you're suffering right now. That's why when you voted for Donald Trump, as a veteran, your VA benefits are being taken away. You're not a wealthy landowner. You're not even white to them. What you need to do is understand your place in America and make a greater place. Because you failed your children by voting for him and relying on someone else to make your future. That's what differentiates black excellence from white inferiority. But I digress. And it is definitely coming to pass. And you will find that this war you are waging on people of color, you're not going to win. You've gotten rid of all your military officials with all the expertise, your allies willing to help you fight any war. And you've gotten rid of your ability to be held accountable. So according to laws in most states, especially Florida, where Latinos are being rounded up, you have something called the Stand Your Ground law. If you feel your life is in danger, you have the legal right to take the life of the person trying to take yours. Now, in some states, that's called King Castle and so forth. So if you want to run around here in military uniforms with masks on, do know that the rest of us who have seen this movie before are educating not only us, but Latinos, Muslims, and every person that looks like me to understand the Constitution. We have lawyers on standby in case we have to defend our bodies against you. Understand that before I say what is next. And prepare yourself for what is about to come. Now I'm going to flash back and give you a little bit of something to educate yourself in case you still do not understand that the only people that are going to survive this is people like me who have prepared and people like Donald Trump. Let's get back to Mr. Leo Frank and the so-called anti-Semitism movement under Donald Trump. Stephen Miller is a Jew, yet he supports Nazis and fascism. Caroline Leavitt is a January 6th liar, denier, Trump sycophant, and bobble-headed Barbie who undermines centuries-long legacy of her own home state of New Hampshire. I thought she was from the Deep South. I didn't know. But at any rate, New Hampshire's contributions to liberty with let me rephrase this. She undermines New Hampshire's contributions to liberty with an anti-American, pro-Confederate message of hate and division. This was the biggest surprise. Oh, before I get to that, let me tell you about how people who come from other countries that aren't white get white. I grew up in a time when there was the mafia still in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and Wildwood, and New York City, all that kind of places. Here comes Rudy Giuliani, an Italian American, hell-bent on eradicating the United States of the American Mafia. He staged protests against black mayors so that the black mayor at that time, so that he can become mayor. This was a white, Irish, German, cops-fueled protest in New York City. I think the mayor's name was David Dinkins or something like that. But at any rate, it was a racist protest to get Giuliani elected as mayor. Now this was after Giuliani went after every person in the Italian mafia. Conveniently. At the same time, and I hate to say it, but around that time I was running the streets of New York City, New Jersey, and other places. The same time Rudy Giuliani was running the American Mafia out of New York and New Jersey, guess who shows up? Donald J. Trump. Businesses got burned out. People got threatened. All sorts of things. Forward to 20-something. And here, the same anti-racketeering Rudy Giuliani, who was America's mayor after 9/11, supports Donald Trump. Someone convicted of racketeering. Rudy Giuliani used his own nationality to eradicate his opponents, stating that basically every Italian other than him and cops were mafia. That's how he got where he was. So, that brings me to Marco Rubio. The new, in my opinion, Rudy Giuliani. Let me tell you something about him. If you can remember, Marco Rubio's father was accused by Donald J. Trump of taking part in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Yet, he gratefully assists the American for whites only regime to deport Afghan refugees who translated and fought with American soldiers against the Taliban. How many people in Marco Rubio's family served in the American military? I wonder about that. So it led me to a very interesting development. People like him are just like people like Donald Trump. Now, Marco Rubio is far from white. But a certain segment of Latin Americans who come to the United States are okay with being used as tools. The reason for this is because in their countries, at those times, they were the Republican Party as we see it today. The racist party, the caste system, the better than. So I'm going to read you a little excerpt while I smoke a cigarette because I got to get on to bigger and better things in a few hours. this is what I found. Marco Rubio's family left before Fidel Castro came into power, which is when we assume that all Cubans fled Cuba and came to the United States of America. So I was wondering why these people that fled Cuba always voted against other Spanish Americans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, El Salvadorians, people from Ecuador and Argentina and every other place other than Cuba. Now, at the time that Marco Rubio's family left Cuba, there was a man called Batista in power. Batista, at that time that Marco Rubio's family fled, there were certain individuals based on caste, which equates into color of your skin and, superiority based on generations or whatever, were under threat, by a flip-flopping kind of rationale by this particular government. So the people that had the money and were invested in, I wrote this down too, monopoly capitalism, did not feel secure under this regime. So before Che Guevara and Fidel Castro went into Cuba with their July 26th movement, people like Marco Rubio's family left Cuba. Now, under Batista, while Marco Rubio's family was still there, there was an organization called the Bureau of Repression of Communist Activities, otherwise known as the Secret Police, now in America. But I digress. Wide-scale murders, tortures, and public executions between 1957 and 1959 occurred under Fulgencio Batista. What followed was suspended elections, monopoly capitalization, neocolonialism, and imperialism. This was becoming widely unpopular during the 26th of January movement. This was considered suspicious by some Americans and Latinos that this particular immigrant group and their offspring voted almost exclusively Republican in all American elections since that time. The product over generations has culminated under Donald J. Trump as a biracial perfect storm of Batista-era martial law, suspended elections, imperialism, neocolonialism, Ukraine in particular, by the United States government by exploiting their minerals, monopoly capitalism, and finally, hereditary supremacy. And this is where I would like to stop. Because the first people on this continent who were suppressed were Native Americans and black people. Since that time, they are the only people still alive to talk about their history that has never been acknowledged by the United States government as a full people in any way. nor has the crimes and Holocaust committed against them ever been acknowledged and compensated for by the United States government, with the violation of every single solitary treaty that we signed with the United States government. For those who cannot see it, anti-Semitism is the test model for the next people that are going to be thrown into the spotlight in order to take your attention away from the Holocaust. First it was Italians. Then they became white by proxy. Then it was the Jews. And on their behalf, we invaded another land and colonized it, gave them weapons, gave them power. Then they became whites in the United States. At the same time, they became the target for Maga, neo-Nazis, the Proud Boys, and the Oath Keepers. But now are coveted by the Trump administration so that they can use them to justify their actions. We saw this before with Manifest Destiny. I'm going to read this in closing. Native Americans and blacks are the only ones at the back of the line. The only two racial groups to endure genocide, rape, and systematic murder on American soil, never to be officially recognized or rectified by the government that executed these crimes against humanity. That being said, black governors like mine in the state of Maryland are not at risk of lynching because they speak out, nor is any other black official or white official in the Democratic Party. The Republican Party is right about the Civil War and the lost cause. And that theory about the South shall rise again, the South rose, but it rose with a bunch of cowards. The Confederacy, a terrorist organization of the United States of America during the Civil War, now occupies over a half of the United States Congress. And they say that there is fear of Donald Trump. And that's why they can't speak out for our democracy. This is not against Donald Trump. It's for our democracy. These same people have no problem walking through the halls of edifices that were erected by black slave labor stolen from Indian land. What could they possibly fear when the greatest price for this country has never been paid by the American military? But by everyone who came before them. Now, I'm not saying that I don't respect the American military. But veterans did not lose their land. They did not get marched out by a president that some of them voted for, who admired Andrew Jackson, who facilitated the Trail of Tears and the Holocaust of half of Native Americans in America. Veterans gave their lives for white America. Even black and Native Americans. And a dream that never came true. That is not gonna come true. So when you tell us how we should respond, and that we should be civilized, that's a lot to ask. It is a lot to ask for us to feel sorry for anyone that did not consider prosperity enough to make a better choice. I don't care if you're a police officer, law enforcement. That does not relieve you of the responsibility of defending this nation up here first. This is why people who talk first and react later will not win. We are still here, the descendants of slaves and Native Americans. It's not rocket science. It's simple math. This cannot endure. Donald Trump and people like Stephen Miller and Caroline Leavitt they're all going to be held accountable. This is just done. I hope it doesn't make it past summer. I strongly believe, and I have been right about everything, Donald Trump. Something big is coming soon. And it's not going to come from the left. It's going to be epic. And we're not going to be able to stop it. But it will stop him. And it will stop everyone that let this happen. You are witnessing right now, in my prediction, the end of the Republican Party. And when I say the end of the Republican Party, I mean no one in any state with any education is going to put anyone back in power that allowed this to happen. This was pretty deep for me, but I can't get focused on what's going on day to day and all that kind of stuff, because I've seen this movie so many times. So many times. And I have generational knowledge of how it's going to turn out. So instead of being 27 years old and, thinking you know everything, you really need to get a grip, because you have no idea. No idea. You're doing the same thing. Just reiterating peaceful protest. You just say the same thing over and over and over again, and you do your dialogue, peaceful protest. We don't need you to tell us what to do. We don't need a cheerleader. We've been here and done this. So how about you understand your enemy first? Then you can tell people who have been here since there were people roaming America how to act. I got a little long-winded, but I needed to get this off my chest. This was just really... So, hopefully, someone will see this, and they'll choose a time to speak and know when to shut the fuck up. Because that is the wisdom of being my age. Knowing when to shut the fuck up. And right now, there are a lot of people in America who need to just shut the fuck up. This is the John Brown Network. Good night and good luck.